Hey everyone, in this video, I'll be going over the solutions for activity 2, where you use the debugger to step through the update sidebar text function, specifically when we go from a piece of code with 9 lines to 10 lines. So these are the questions we'll be going over. First, we want to know the value of end and self.previous end. So this is quite straightforward. You have a couple options here. You can either look in the variables pane. Here we can see the value of end is 10. And to see the value of self.previous end, well, we can expand this self variable to see the previous end attribute. We see that it's 9. We could also figure this out by just putting our cursor on these variables, and you can see the value of previous end is 9, and the value of end, if we highlight it, is 10. The second question asks the type of self.sidebar text. Again, we can consult this variables pane here on the left container. We can see that the self.sidebar text appears over here, and we'll want to expand this, and we'll see that it's a tkinter text object. So tkinter is an external library that's in the idle lib code base. Again, I encourage you to maybe use some of these just-in-time learning practices to use Google, Stack Overflow, ChatGPT to sort of understand what tkinter is. But it seems to be sort of this object that stores text. Now let's close this. The value of new text. So to see the value of new text, which is down here on line 349, we'll want to step over from where the breakpoint started. So we'll step over current width and new width. And as this happens, you can sort of see what the values of current width and new width are. So just to make sure we're all on the same page of this code, width difference is finding the difference in the number of digits, aka the width of the line numbers pane. So we can see that the width of the string version of end is 2 because we have 2 digits in 10. And the same thing for previous end is 1 because 9 only has 1 digit. And then if there is a width difference, if width difference is 1, then we go into this code where we find the current width and the new width, and then we actually update the value of this sidebar text width field. And so as we're stepping through this, again, we can see where we're at with this yellow highlight. We'll be able to answer the next few questions. So we also want to know how many times this with temp enable text widget line is executed in the code flow. We can see that we've just approached it 1 time so far. And understand that even if you don't fully know what this, with keyword is or this temp enable text widget means, again, this is a chance to use some just-in-time learning principles. This is a context manager. You might have seen it when we have code like with open file name, and then we maybe read stuff from the file name in Python. You can think of that as sort of an example of what a context manager is. But again, I encourage you to explore what it is on your own. And we can see new text down here. Maybe we don't fully know what itertools.chain does. Maybe you don't know what map means, or maybe even not what range means. But we can still use the debugger to step through these lines. And we see as we step through new text, we have to step through a few of these lines because, this single command is spread out on 3 lines. So now as we go back, and we'll press 1 more time, and now we can see that new text appears in this variables container. New text is \n10. So even without fully understanding what these 4 lines of code means, we can sort of understand that new text is finding out what will be added to the line numbers column. And here we'll have a \n. This is a new line character in Python. It's basically like pressing enter and going to the next line. And then the 10 is sort of there because that's what this new end line number is. Presumably we get it derived from what this, end value is. And so the value of new text is \n10. And we still need to answer these next 2 questions. This last question says, what happens if you remove the \n in the new text definition? So what I'll actually do here is utilize this pretty interesting feature of a debugger where we can change these variable values. So to do this, you can just double click on the variable that you want to change. And now I can edit this field. And I'll just do backspace 2 times to set new text equals to 10. I just pressed enter. So now new text is equal to 10. Okay. And before we wanted to do that before this self.sidebar text.insert line is executed, because it seems like we are inserting this new text in some certain location. And so I want to make sure to change the value of new text before we actually insert, the value of new text. And so now I'll step over this one more time, and you can see that we went back to this with temp enabled text widget line. And let me do it one more time. Maybe we go through it again. And it turns out we don't. We skipped from this with value, this with line to line 357, where we're just updating the value of previous end. We're setting what used to be 9 to be 10 now because we've added a line of code. And so now so just to be clear, the answer to this number 4 question is 2. We executed this line twice. First, when we started going through it, we visited it one more time on the way back, and then we skipped to the end. And then finally, to see what actually happens if I remove the \n. So remember, I already changed this new text value, and we already did this insert command where we presumably inserted this new text somewhere. So now I'm just going to press play or resume, right? I'm going to continue execution of the program, and let's actually see what happens here. Interestingly, we went from 8 to 10, but here's something interesting. We still do have my cursor on this sort of like new line. So clearly something is wrong here. This is not the way it's supposed to happen. Normally there is the \n, but something interesting that, we can sort of piece together is that I still think that there is a 9 over here, but since we removed the \n, we only have the 1 and the 0 from the 10 appearing. It seems to be, right justified. And we set the width to only be 2. So right now we're only seeing the rightmost 2 digits of what should be 910 over here. And I think there should have been the 10 over here where my cursor is. But since we made these changes, we don't actually have a line number value where our cursor is. So I'm not going to keep running through this because now I think, the program, it might be a little bit broken or there's something wrong about it. But this was mostly for you to get a chance to see what all is possible with the debugger and to get the solutions to activity number 2 and see how a lot of these questions are, in fact, quite straightforward to answer with a debugger, and it really aids in your overall comprehension of the code snippet.